All right, we're back. It's time for our waiver wire segment. We go position by position. Justin Boone hands over his best options at each spot. Let's talk quarterbacks here heading into week 11.
All right. It's usual 4 we're going to hit on every time. For quarterbacks, Joe Flacco at the Steelers, Marcus Mariota at the Dolphins, JJ McCarthy versus the Bears, Aaron Rodgers versus the Bengals. We're kind of limited here, right? Like, I'm throwing in a couple guys that are just over the 50% mark, which I normally use as the cutoff. Throwing them in there just because they are out there in some leagues. If we're talking about like streamer types, they might be out there. So want to talk about those guys as well. Now, with Flacco, we hit on the news off the top that we're going to hear whether Joe Burrow is going to return or not, potentially. It seems like he wants week 13. It could be week 14. Either way, he's going to be back by the end of the season, it seems now. So if Burrow comes back, that'll obviously take some steam out of Joe Flacco's outlook the rest of the way. That turns him into just a streamer type for the next few weeks. And yet still, the guy's been crushing it for fantasy. So obviously, we want to go out and pick him up and potentially play him. So keep him in mind. Like I said, over the 50% rostered mark, but multiple touchdowns in every game that he started for the Bengals. 342 and 3 touchdowns against the Steelers in week 7. He's playing the Steelers this week. But I will also say Joe Burrow's not on this list, but because I put a couple guys that were over the 50% mark, he's only 58% rostered last time I checked. So you could potentially go out and get Burrow in some leagues. If he were out there, he would be the number 1 quarterback ad. Marcus Mariota. Now we're back to talking about like streamer types, and Jaden Daniels not going to need surgery on the elbow. He's avoided getting placed on IR. Unfortunately, I mean, the Commanders are 3-7. I think they're going to fall out of the playoff hopes here if they haven't already. So does that mean that he is going to stay away from the team? Because they've said like he's not on IR yet kind of thing, right? Like we might still decide to just throw him on IR. And Mariota continues to produce. He's averaged 18.7 fantasy points per game in his last 6 contests where he's taken the field for at least 50% of the snaps for the Commanders. The Dolphins defense, they've had some mixed results recently, but on the season, still a top 10 matchup for fantasy QBs. So you can continue to look at Mariota as that, high-end QB2 who could potentially give you low-end QB1 numbers. JJ McCarthy, probably don't have to spend too much time here. We've said it all. And yet just remember, he's a young guy. He only has had 4 starts in the NFL. He's shown some value with his legs. That's great for fantasy. Could it potentially come together at some point? I think it could. I mean, at least 25 rushing yards and or a touchdown in every single game. And then this most recent game, 48 rushing yards. It's not that they're like designing a ton of runs for him. He's not that kind of quarterback, but he can scramble. He can pick up yards with his legs. And you got to factor that in when you're looking at fantasy. And I mentioned earlier, very soft schedule later in the season, which I think will come into play for him. And then Aaron Rodgers, the matchup with the Bengals is just so good that yes, we can consider Aaron Rodgers when the matchups are great. And this one, last time he played him, 4 passing touchdowns. He was a top 7 fantasy QB that week. So you could look to him again here in a game that's very high scoring, projected for 50.5 points in this one. I think we could see another potential shootout between these two teams. So Rodgers is a guy that you could look at just as a QB2 streamer. We're not getting crazy.
Yeah, it's the tight end only offense going against the team that gives up a bunch of production to tight ends. So I do think that Aaron Rodgers on the streaming radar. Can I make a case for Michael Penix as a streaming quarterback? I mean, you got to be in a pretty tough spot, but if you're dealing with one of these quarterback injuries, Michael Penix obviously hasn't been great this year. They got blown out by the Panthers the last time they played, but this one is at home, indoors in Atlanta. And at least while Penix hasn't been great, the offense is funneling everything through Drake London right now. So I do that. And obviously, Tyler Shuck carved up this Panthers defense just this past week. So again, if you're ultra desperate, and just to throw out a different name that we don't talk about every week in the streaming quarterback section, I just make the mild case for Michael Penix there.
Yeah, it's been a while since Michael Penix has made it here. And yeah, we'll see what happens in that game. But in the running back section here, there could be a guy that just vultures all the touchdowns from this offense, and Michael Penix can't get it done. And that guy is Tyler Algier, right? Tyler Algier going against the Panthers. It's the kind of matchup for him where he could potentially come through for fantasy. So let's talk about 4 running backs. Tajay Spears going up against the Texans. Blake Corum versus the Seahawks. Amari DeMercado versus the 49ers. And then Tyler Algier versus the Panthers. And yes, Harmon, this is not a great week for waiver wire running backs. There's not that guy out there where we can just throw in and, now he's an RB2 in your lineup. Not so much. We're kind of growing after flex plays here and hoping we can find something that, maybe turns into a real fantasy asset as we go. And Tajay Spears is a name that we've brought up many, many times, right? You think back to last season and how he finished things last year, just a huge fantasy playoffs for him. Could he do something like that again? I mean, Tony Pollard does not seem to be the answer there. Tony Pollard snaps going down. Tajay Spears outsnapped him in 2 of the last 3, outproduced him in 3 of the last 4. So could we see that just continue to happen? I think it's possible. You're never going to feel great about having these guys in your lineup, basically anybody in the Titans offense. And yet Tajay Spears is a flex option and somebody that you could consider in a pinch. Blake Corum. I mean, Kyren Williams is no doubt the lead back for the Rams. There's no question about that. And yet that role, his role's decreased a little bit because they've gotten Blake Corum more involved. At least 13 touches each of the last 2 games for Blake Corum. Put up 58 yards on the Saints, 56 yards on the Niners this past week. And this past week played a season high 39% of the snaps. And I'm not suggesting that he is going to take over this job or even turn this into like a 50-50 backfield, but you can certainly start Corum as an RB3 flex option, especially in good matchups. And then we know with a lot of these guys that I'm talking about, they're one injury away, right? Like if that starter goes down, all of a sudden Blake Corum would be a fantastic play. Running backs and Sean McVay offenses, they tend to be pretty good for fantasy. So if Kyren Williams were out, Blake Corum would be an awesome, awesome pickup and the kind of guy that we'd be emptying our budgets to try to get. So why not go out and get him now? Why is he only 11% rostered, Harmon? It's one of the biggest things that we ask every single week when we talk about the waiver wire. It doesn't make any sense. One of the best backup RBs out there. Amari Demercado. So this one's interesting. Trey Benson is another one of these backs where we just haven't heard much of an update. I didn't see anything today about him yet. Is he going to come back soon? Last week, he had the chance. He could have potentially come back if they wanted to activate him, and yet they didn't. And we haven't heard an updated timeline for when he's going to return. And in his absence, we've seen a few different backs step up, but Demercado's turned into like an RB3 flex option here, only playing around 40% of the snaps, but 14 carries for 78 yards in week 9, 7 touches for 104 yards this past week. And he's been a decent flex option. I think he can continue to do that. Bam Knight got banged up in this one. He's dealing with an ankle injury. We'll see if he can play in week 11 or not. But if Benson's not back, Demercado is someone you could put in your lineup. And then Tyler Algier, like we said, right? He's out here vulturing touchdowns, 6 touchdowns in 9 games for a guy playing a limited role in that backfield. It's strange to see. I don't think we need to get too crazy about worrying about him infringing upon Bijan Robinson. Bijan's still going to get his. There's just a little thorn in his side. And the odd time Algier is going to come out and put up a decent day, it's normally because he finds the end zone once or twice and not because he's putting up huge yardage totals. And yet Algier now in that conversation as somebody that you could play as a touchdown or bust flex.
Oh yeah, and he's good. Like that's the problem for the Bijan bros is that he's good. Like and he deserves those carries that he's getting, especially around the goal line. So I don't think there's anything changing there. And yeah, just to echo your point on Blake Corum, 11% rostered. Come on, he's playable. And if anything happened to Kyren Williams, he would immediately be a high-end fantasy starter. So to me, the way I manage my teams at this time of the year, unless I'm just really, really hurting, I'm going to let somebody else pick up the Tajay Spears and the Amari, spin the wheel on this week's Cardinals running back and just grab a Blake Corum and just take what goes there because the upside is much higher on those pieces. And I feel like based on what you said there, you probably agree with that. So, all right, those are the running backs. Not that exciting of a section. We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we've got wide receivers and tight ends and including a deep sleeper that's really interesting. We're going to get into that right after this. All right, we're back. We're landing the plane here in the waiver wire section. We're talking through wide receivers, tight ends, and our deep sleeper. Boone, hit us with the wide receivers to add heading into week 11.
I know this is your favorite part of every Monday show. You always want to talk about the receivers. So it's a little more exciting, this group, compared to what we talked about at quarterbacks and running backs this week, too. So I wouldn't fault you for wanting to talk about these wideouts. But Troy Franklin, who we already mentioned when we went over Cortland Sutton, he's going against the Chiefs. Alec Pierce, he's on bye, but man, has he been fantastic lately. Tez Johnson against my Bills. He's also been playing pretty well, filling in for some injured guys. And Jaden Higgins versus the Titans. Harmon, we finally saw the rookie wideouts start to maybe make their move, just get a little more work in that Houston offense. But let's talk through these guys. The Troy Franklin thing, we don't need to spend too much time on because he's been mentioned in the waiver wire column a whole bunch. We've talked about him on this show, but the usage has increased. He's getting more opportunities. The targets have followed suit. At least 8 targets in each of his last 4 games. Touchdowns in 3 of the past 4. He's playing well. He's an upside wide receiver 3 now for fantasy. Alec Pierce, though. So in his last 7 games here, Harmon, he's gone for 67 yards or more on 6 different occasions. And the recent outings have been so impressive. The stat lines, 5 for 98, 2 for 69, 6 for 115, 4 for 84, and a touchdown. He has become a high-end wide receiver 3 who legitimately has wide receiver 2 fantasy potential every single week. He is in one of the league's best offenses right now. We've recommended him as a cheap way to invest in the Colts attack. I don't think that discount's there anymore. There's no way you're getting this guy cheap. People know now if he is still on the waiver wire, you're going to have to pay up to get him. And I think you probably should. It probably makes sense. It's a guy that you should be investing in. I think he can keep this up certainly the rest of the year. So he's somebody you should be very excited to go out and grab. Tez Johnson, I mean, it goes back to the injuries, like I said, right? And when are we going to get Chris Godwin back? When is Mike Evans going to come back? It might not be for a while on either of those guys. So Tez Johnson's been getting it done. 20 targets over his past 3 outings, at least 40 yards in 5 straight appearances here. 4 touchdowns over his last 4 games. There's nice production here. It's not week winning production, but it's nice production that you could slide into your flex spot. So definitely consider him for your fantasy lineup. And then this is the one that I'm sure you have something to say, Harmon, because we have wondered if the Texans rookie wideouts were going to get worked in more. There's been some moments when they've popped up. It's often been with other guys injured. And yet now, is this the time that we're starting to see it change, right? Both rookies, little more work this week. We saw guys like Xavier Hutchinson in the past, and back early in the season, Braxton Berrios and Justin Watson. These guys were all playing ahead of them. This week, Xavier Hutchinson snaps came down a bit. Even Christian Kirk snaps came down a bit. And we saw that open the door for Higgins. 7 targets, Noel 4 targets, 42 and a TD for Higgins, 35 for Jalen Noel. I think both these guys have a chance to potentially emerge the rest of the way. And this offense needs something more. They need to find some guys that have some juice that can kind of, inject something into this passing attack. CJ Stroud hopefully will be back this week. He's still in concussion protocol, but let's hope that he gets cleared. Either way, I think these are deeper stashes, not necessarily guys you're going to put right in your lineup, but players that we think have some talent and could potentially emerge the rest of the way. And I always like to mention somebody in each section that's available in a lot of leagues, like 80% of plus leagues. This is the case with both these guys. You can still get these guys on your roster. I would go out and try to do it.
Yeah. I mean, Alec Pierce I feel like I've been talking about him for weeks and weeks and weeks now. Weeks and weeks that his role has really changed. And I think he's the guy that you can credibly start every single week. Now, I push back on the idea that he's suddenly the wide receiver 1 here. I think it's still going to be a moving target. And I think everybody will have their roles in this passing game, and it's just going to be a little bit week by week with these guys. That was the perfect matchup for Pierce, as I highlighted, the single high stuff for him. But that doesn't mean like Pittman's done or Downs is done. Those guys are going to have their moments as well. Obviously, Tyler Warren, nice game as well. The last 2 are interesting. Tez Johnson, I think you summed that up perfectly. Not a league winner or anything, but perfectly credible wide receiver 3 guy that you can stick into your lineup because I don't know when Chris Godwin's coming back. Jaden Higgins, I want to get excited about these Texans rookie receivers, but I just have been burned by this team a little bit too much. Now, in the backfield, we did see a real flip over to Woody Marks as the clear lead back. We've also seen that yo-yo at times, so hopefully this is just a full move by the Texans coaching staff to be a little bit less conservative. D'Amico Ryans and these guys being a little bit more serious to get the young players involved here because it just has to happen. Xavier Hutchinson, 0 targets on 27 routes. Christian Kirk, 3 targets on 24 routes. Those guys aren't giving you anything. Higgins can give you something. Noel can give you something. We just need to see both of these guys. So I wouldn't go crazy adding any of them, but I do hope that we can see a second half surge from these players.
All right, we always talk a ton about the receivers for you, and then I got to rush through tight ends. So let's talk about some tight ends quick here. Juwan Johnson, he is on bye, but man, has he been producing. And we saw early in the season for him, he had some great stats in the opening month. Then he dealt with an injury, had a few down games. He is right back there producing again, right? At least 50 yards or a touchdown in 4 straight games, coming off 92 yards and a touchdown against the Panthers. He gets to play the Panthers again in the first week of the fantasy playoffs too. So this is somebody I think you can go out and with confidence play as a low-end tight end 1 the rest of the way. With Shaheed gone, the targets are going elsewhere. He is getting a lot of work in that offense. Really like him. Colston Loveland at the Vikings, Cade Otton at the Bills, maybe even Dawson Knox versus the Bucks, although there's a lot of guys I could have put in that last spot. But Loveland and Otton right now, we're seeing decent performances from them. I was very happy to see Colston Loveland come out, and though the snaps went back down, they did Harmon. He was over 80% the prior 2 games, went down to 61 this week with Cole Kmet back, with Luther Burden out there. There were a lot of other options in the offense, but he follows up that huge 118-yard game with a touchdown, follows it up with 55 yards, which is not bad for a tight end. That is pretty good, and especially when it's a guy who we know is a first-round talent, who I continue to think the best is yet to come for him this year. He's only going to get more involved in this offense as we go. So he's another guy that's in that low-end tight end 1, high-end tight end 2 mix. Cade Otton, kind of like the Tez Johnson thing, right? It's a similar situation where you can play him when all these other guys are injured at receiver, and when those guys come back, don't even think about it. Cade Otton is going to become a background player in that offense. He is not going to get the targets anymore. He'll be the starter, but he won't get the targets anymore. That's just the way it's always gone for him. So right now in his last few games, 81 yards, 51 yards, 65, 40, 82 this week on 9 catches. He's putting up nice numbers, certainly can consider him. And then Dawson Knox, it'll just come down to how long Kincaid's out for, and you could consider him as a streamer, but really nothing more than that. And there's a few guys, like I said, I could have put Luke Musgrave in there, although Luke Musgrave, I got to do it, Harmon. He's playing on Monday night. Am I doing?
No,
is it
I'm
another
starting
one of
him
these,
in 2 places. Don't do it.
No. Is he a guy? Is he hopefully no injuries? He has a good game. He's a guy you could consider in better matchups as we go. But yeah, I feel bad. And then to finish it off, one deep sleeper as we're running down the clock here. Kyle Williams. I'll go back to receivers so we can let you go off at the end. Kyle Williams on the Patriots finally got his opportunity this week. Came in, did all his work on 1 catch, 72-yard touchdown, but flashed what he could do for this offense. And it's kind of like the Travion Henderson thing. Let's get some other guys in this offense that bring some juice. He's a rookie out here, and he got the opportunity because Kayshon Boutte was hurt. We'll see when Kayshon Boutte comes back, but right now, I think you could look at Kyle Williams as somebody that you could stash, potentially play if Boutte remains on the sidelines, but somebody that could give this passing attack a little something extra. We know how good Drake May is, so go out and get one of his rookie weapons and see if he becomes a meaningful fantasy option down the stretch.
Did get a notification because this team plays on Thursday as we're taping this. Ramondre Stevenson, Kayshon Boutte, and Terrell Jennings all limited in practice on Monday. So we might see them this week. We might not. It is a short week, so we'll see. But yeah, just on Kyle Williams, thought it was an okay game in isolation. Clearly flashed the speed, clearly flashed the man coverage ability, but you can still see he's not like fully ramped up. And the problem for him is that Boutte will be back, and Boutte has been an explosive play guy for them. And Matt Collins had 100 yards in this past game. So I'm like, is there room for him? He's not going to take Diggs' job. Maybe he rotates in a little more, which would mostly just be a dynasty thing. I'd be a little surprised, I guess, if he ended up being kind of somebody that we're starting in fantasy the rest of the way, but it is a interesting prospect attached to a good offense. So at least there is that.
We're talking deeper leagues. He's 2% roster. We're talking deep stashes here. We talked about Phil Maffa one time in this section. Come on.
You talked about Phil Maffa, let's be clear. And I did have to start Kyle Williams in a deep league. So I'm not completely poo-pooing it. Those are my level-headed expectations. And Boone, don't put me in a box, buddy. Okay, I'm happy to talk tight ends for much longer next week if you want to than these receivers. You think I haven't talked enough about Tez Johnson and Jaden Higgins and in other areas of my life? I'm content if we want to hit some other positions longer next week. You just let me know, buddy. You get in the driver's seat and you drive the car. I'm just along for the ride here, man.